are so many crazy characters in Marvel Comics that some just get kind of forgotten sometimes, especially when it comes to villains, because those guys can get defeated and either sent to the afterlife or locked up in prison and we never have to think about them again. For example, we've got Armless Tiger Man. Gustav Hertz worked in a mechanical laboratory in Munich, Germany during the 1940s. Now unfortunately for Hertz, one day his arms got caught in a machine and had to be amputated. While this is a horrible thing to happen to anybody, Gustav did survive the experience and he was later given reading material on how to operate day to day without arms, instead using his mouth and feet to complete daily tasks. Turns out that he was really good at this. Hertz developed ridiculous skill in using his teeth and feet. He even took things a couple steps further. He sharpened his teeth into fangs so that he could bite people, and he even developed above average levels of strength and dexterity in his jaw, legs, and toes, allowing him to bend steel with his mouth, kick really hard, and throw daggers with his toes. He ended up proving how capable he was as a World War II enemy of the hero Angel and Wakanda, where he was completely destroyed by that era's Black Panther. What was really surprising was when he reappeared in Incredible Hercules number 129 to 131 in 2009. He was among a group of individuals that were the Greek god Pluto's jury of the undead, and they together put Zeus on trial and subdued Hercules himself. Past that though, Armless Tiger Man has appeared one more time in Ziggy Pig's Silly Seal Comics Volume 2 number 1 in 2019, and let's be honest, no one really read that. Now, Hulk villains are always a fun thing to talk about because they are either super smart or incredibly powerful, both of which make for a fun read. The character Ravage is one villain that is both of those things wrapped into one, which makes it all the more puzzling that he has completely disappeared. Dr. Jeffrey Crawford was a former mentor of Bruce Banner, who used the Hulk's gamma radiation to cure himself of a debilitating neuromuscular disease, while pretending that he was trying to help Banner cure himself of the Hulk persona. Unfortunately, like a good chunk of others who subject themselves to gamma, Crawford became a big old green monster who was subject to fits of rage. But unlike a good chunk of other gamma mutates, Jeffrey kept his wits and was both an incredibly strong villain able to rival the Hulk physically, but also cunning and able to outthink the Hulk as well. He had this plan to try and become Ravage full-time instead of only temporarily hulking out. Banner had to team up with General Ross to try and bring him down, resulting in a huge brawl between the two Green Goliaths, but it was actually Major Talbot who used a cryogenic inducer to freeze Ravage, and he was kept in suspended animation at Gamma Base being researched for ways to defeat the Hulk himself, and the last mention of him was way back in 1998. What always boggles me is when a villain has an absolutely huge backstory that ties into the Elder Gods and the greater Marvel godly planes, but then they just never show up. For example, Echidna, or Echidna, however you want to pronounce it. Echidna or Echidna was an Elder Spawn, the granddaughter of the Elder God known as Set, who is a big deal in Marvel Comics. Set was the first Elder God to realize that he could steal the power of his other Elder Gods by consuming them, which kicked off a whole massive war between the Elder Gods, turning most of them into demons. So his granddaughter is not someone to mess with. Echidna is the mother of all monsters. She made Angerboda, Cerberus, Chimera, the Lernean Hydra, the Nemean Lion, and the Sphinx, just to name a few. Despite that though, in the modern day, she has been a part of some just straight up sucky teams. In 2013, she became a part of the second Doom Maidens team under Caroline LeFay, who were eventually able to resurrect Morgana Le Fay. And in 2018, she became a part of Namor the Submariner's Defenders of the Deep when he decided that land dwellers weren't allowed in the ocean, and she stayed part of that Atlantean team until she turned on Namor and challenged him for the Atlantean throne and got defeated by Ghost Rider when the Avengers showed up back in 2021. Now, the villain Dr. Bong was a goofy villain even during the Golden Age. He has a metal ball where his left hand should be, and he uses it to create concussive blasts by eye, striking the appendage against his bell-shaped helmet. We actually have no idea how he came to become Dr. Bong, because his backstory mainly just touches on how he was a bullied kid who found power in writing and language, so then he became a very unethical reporter, and then tried to become a celebrity and joined up as a performer with a rock band where he would play different characters, and one of those performances got out of hand when his hand got cut off by a guillotine. I wish I was making that up. Now chronologically, he then appeared in Howard the Duck number 15 in May of 1977 as Dr. Bong with random knowledge of biological engineering and sonics. He faced Howard and eventually She-Hulk, and then in 2010's Deadpool Volume 2, the villain was reimagined just a smidge bit more threateningly as Deadpool's former therapist, and having cloned a team of superheroes, giving his clones regeneration abilities. He then joined a group called the Villains Anonymous, who all had run-ins with Spider-Man, and the last time he was seen was in 2014's Amazing Spider-Man Annual Volume 2, number 1. Now this next one may be one of the more revolting villains out there, and it only gets worse when you learn that Douglas Carmody, the Bogeyman or Boogeyman, was a villain to the Power Pack, a group of kids. Carmody was in charge of the Carmody Research Labs, where Dr. James Power was working to perfect his antimatter power generator. When the Power Pack gained their abilities from the destruction of the generator, Carmody lost his job and essentially blamed the Power Pack for it all. Classic villain backstory. He then went on to hunt the Power Pack, considering them mutants even though they weren't. He stole a battlesuit from Project Pegasus, and using this suit to try and wipe out the Power Pack, he ended up coming into battle with Asgard's Warriors 3 and the New Mutants. Now in Power Pack number 40, a demon named Nastir, I think is how you pronounce it, invaded New York City, and he turned several people, including Bogeyman or Boogeyman, into demons. And for Carmody, he basically embraced it completely, permanently staying as a demon while the others returned to normal. He tried to wipe out the Power Pack again with his new abilities, but then he saw himself in a reflection and went tumbling off a building. That was back in 1988. He appeared one more time in 1993's Cage Volume 1, number 19, facing Luke Cage, where he apparently passed away. But this isn't confirmed, and so he is basically considered missing, which isn't at all a pleasant thought. Now, similar to how the High Evolutionary created the New Men, he also created the Man Beast from a red wolf that he genetically modified. However, unlike the New Men, Man Beast was created using a new isotope which granted him a heightened physicality and enhanced mental capabilities, also granting him a greater level of ambition. He terrorized Counter-Earth, or more accurately, he led a revolt against the High Evolutionary, which, I mean, that isn't really so bad. That guy sucks. But he was eventually stopped by Thor before he could do real damage. He tried this 2 more times actually, being defeated by Wolverine and Kitty Pryde the first time, and then on Counter-Earth, he was stopped by Adam Warlock, who slightly devolved Man Beast, which is kind of terrifying to think about. He would then return again on Earth as the Hate Monger, having seemingly re-evolved back into his normal self, but then he was defeated by Spider-Man, and he was thought to be actually killed, but nope! He actually tried to stop the High Evolutionary again, infiltrating his Knights of Wundagore in the late 90s. Unfortunately for the Man Beast, the High Evolutionary and Quicksilver devolved him back into a wolf, but he's returned from that before, so who knows? Next up is the villain known as Belladonna. Belladonna was actually a Spider-Man villain, but it's more accurate to call her a villain to another Spidey villain, Roderick Kingsley, aka Hobgoblin. But before that ever happened, Belladonna was Narda Ravana, a European fashion designer. The problem was that Kingsley was another famous fashion designer, only one that stole from other designers. Kingsley allegedly stole Ravana's designs and marketed them in the United States, stealing her success, and for that, I guess he had to pay. Swearing vengeance, Narda assumed the guise of Belladonna and put together a small group of henchmen. She used toxic gas as her main tool, creating gas that could dissolve Spider-Man's webs, taking people's lives and having her henchmen dress as the Prowler to distract Spider-Man, all for the end goal of wiping out Kingsley from the face of the earth. The most ironic part of this whole situation, though, is that Belladonna just didn't have the popularity needed to be a lasting villain, getting arrested in 1980, while Kingsley, he became the Hobgoblin, and he's been causing problems all the way up until 2020 and is bound to come back at some point. Okay, so next up is a group of obscure villains made for the express purpose of facing another obscure group of heroes. Heavy Metal was a team made up of a group of cybernetically enhanced, super intelligent animals with weaponized exoskeletons. Can't get much more comic book booky than that. Their team members included Armory, an octopus because arms, get it? Tail Gunner, a vulture, Bloodbath, a shark, Ramrod, a rhino, and they were led by Uproar, a blue-faced gorilla. Now this team was created by Adam Frost of Multicorp as a prototype, privately owned attack force set to oppose the team known as Brute Force, which is also a team of cybernetically enhanced superintelligent animals with weaponized exoskeletons. Also created by Multicorp, but they were created by Dr. Randall Pierce, and these guys were good. Except the problem is both of these teams were really just a part of Weapons Plus, the ones who created Captain America and eventually Wolverine, and they are not exactly the best people around. Heavy Metal was around for 4 issues of the Brute Force comic in 1990, and they have never been seen since. Remember back when I talked about Echidna or Echidna, and we talked about the Defenders of the Deep? Well, this team was basically filled with water-based villains that had nothing better to do, and one of them was a guy called Tiger Shark. So get this, Todd Arliss was a swimmer who took part in the Olympic Games. Cool. He ended up damaging his spinal cord when he rescued a drowning man. Dang. He was so desperate to regain his swimming ability that he then willingly participated in an experiment by the scientist Dr. Lemuel Dorcas. Interesting. The doctor blended Arliss's DNA with that of Namor the Submariner and a tiger shark, because of course he did. This experiment was totally successful, only it completely changed Arliss both physically and mentally. Now he had razor-sharp teeth and gills and had become savage and incredibly aggressive. He became a supervillain and named himself Tiger Shark, becoming an adversary for Namor the Submariner. Now funnily enough though, after years and years of battling against Namor and the superhero community, he joined the Defenders of the Deep, and now he hasn't been seen since 2019 when they attacked an oil drilling platform in Alaska. And last up for today is Bram Velsing. For starters, he has an incredibly strange name that is very obviously a reference to Bram Stoker and his character Van Helsing. So, Bram Velsing, also known as Dread Knight, is better known as an enemy to Tony Stark in the Ultimate Universe. Unfortunately, in the 1610 universe, he just becomes another Iron Man villain that creates another Iron Man-like armor. But in Earth 616, Bram Velsing was actually a Latverian scientist who didn't like Dr. Doom's schemes and was punished by having a mask fused to his face. He became kind of like a villain, but also a servant to Dr. Doom in a way, allying himself with Victoria Frankenstein and the creations of Victor Frankenstein, which would make you think that he was actually a hero, but he was never played that way. He eventually moved on from being just a Dr. Doom villain and has gone on to fight Iron Man on a few occasions, as well as the Black Knight and Spider-Man. He was this really cool looking armored up man with an even cooler mask, wielding a super cool lance, riding a black winged horse. It was dope, but curiously, while he's never actually been sent to the afterlife, his last appearance was serving Dr. Doom in Iron Man Legacy Volume 1 Number 3 back in 2010, and he hasn't been seen since.
The West Coast Avengers get all the weird villains. Cactus is a great example. He is a cactus and he's funny. Literally the first time he's seen in West Coast Avengers 17, Wonder Man laughs at him because he's a cactus. Cactus was created by the Dominius computer from a desert cactus. The computer gave the cactus human-like mobility and intelligence. This cactus is the original, but there are hundreds of duplicates out there apparently. Cactus's powers are shooting his cactus needles at a destructive speed and regenerating quickly, as he is technically a super powered plant. There were 2 other villains created from desert elements alongside Cactus. They were Butt, made of rock, and Gilla, made from the venomous lizard called the Gilla Monster. A super cactus, while funny and cool, didn't stand much of a chance against the West Coast Avengers and was defeated, but maybe we'll see a clone of him somewhere soon. Live action Two Gun Kid or Rawhide Kid can fight it. The leader of the group of desert misfits Cactus was Sunstroke. He was a human, however we don't really know how he got his powers. The villain just says he created himself, whatever that means. All he says to explain is that a man's sense of strategy was melded with the power of the Daystar. Merging with this power made him capable of absorbing light and heat. He can also generate light and heat to attack with. He did threaten to melt the armor off Iron Man's back. He fought the Avengers in the desert that day and disappeared shortly after that battle was ultimately lost. He resurfaced to to attend a weapons expo and briefly fought Captain America. He went on to fight the X-Men. Later, he joined the Masters of Evil, but was arrested after the team unsuccessfully took on the Thunderbolts. Echidna is literally mother. She is the mother of monsters both in Greek mythology and Marvel mythology. She has fought the Avengers Standard a few times and was affiliated with the Defenders of the Deep. She helped King Namor keep humans out of the water when the king declared the oceans off limits to everything that wasn't native to it. Echidna was also part of the Doom Maidens. During her time there, she attempted to recruit the Amazons, but ended up fighting the Amazons and losing. Most of her scraps with the Avengers happened while she was on the Defenders of the Deep. Eventually, she fought Ghost Rider and was neutralized by him. Icon among men, literally, his name is Icon. Icon appeared in 2 issues, Excalibur 59 and 60. He was a Wakandan biochemist who experimented on himself with the advanced tech Wakanda had to offer. The experiments resulted in him gaining the ability to turn himself and others into wood. With his new power, he set his eyes on the Wakandan throne. He had the idea in his head that Black Panther did not respect him as a scientist. Not true, by the way. One night during a Wakandan celebration, Icon shows up and starts turning people to wood. Luckily, the Avengers are in attendance, something Icon did not plan for. He does have an ace up his sleeve though. When someone is turned to wood, they are then under Icon's control. Black Panther wouldn't let the Avengers attack the wooden army as they are still technically his subjects. But worry not, out of literally nowhere comes this guy called Jungle Man to distract Icon. Jungle Man gives the Avengers their moment to start the fight, but Icon surrenders very quickly. The reason is because his whole plan rested on taking the throne quickly through fear, because the turning to wood thing only lasts an hour. The change back makes him pass out and he's carried away by Black Panther. Grotesque is hard to kill, for real. He first fought against the X-Men and was the guy that everyone thought eliminated Professor X, but he didn't because it was Changeling, but the energy blast Grotesque took then didn't kill him, and he went on to become a menace to Miss Marvel next. She also hit him with something that should have ended him. He again survived and fought the Avengers. In this particular battle, he was part of a group of subterranean beings that were initially fleeing their home underground because it was being attacked by deviants. Grotesque was a villain at heart though, and later, after that battle, kidnapped Thor's human host, Donald Blake, holding him hostage while Grotesque's lava men brought the living rock to the surface. The idea was that the living rock would then blow up a lot of the surface world. Thor made sure that didn't happen and broke the rock before it could come up. All the energy from the rock supposedly destroyed Grotesque. But he lived. He really is that one Emma Roberts surprise but you thought you'd seen the last of me meme. Turns out the energy just destroyed his body, not his spirit, so that was still floating around. The lava men took that spirit and put it in impenetrable armor, and he went on to fight the X-Men again. Nightcrawler found the cheat code to defeat Spirit Armor Grotesque. He took off his helmet. That's it. That caused the spirit to dissipate. Is this the end for Grotesque? Who knows? He has come back so many times, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him again soon. Making a deal with the devil is a common occurrence in the Marvel Universe. Actor Jason Rowland joined the trend in Tower of Shadows 5 when he made a deal with a demon, acting success in exchange for his soul. The demon was revealed to be Satanish, created by Dormammu and one of the most powerful demons seen by Earth. Jason's side effect of the deal was he looked like a monster, so he stayed out of the spotlight for a few years. He also, in that time, took on the villain name Hangman. Eventually, he met the mercenary group Night Shift and took over the team for Satanish. Hangman convinced the team to give up their souls to him so he could have more fame and power. The only thing was, in the middle of all of this, his group caught the attention of the West Coast Avengers. The West Coast Avengers and Night Shift, while initially at odds, joined forces once the Night Shift realized their souls were in jeopardy. When the two teams defeated Hangman and his master, Hangman left to join another team of villains, the Lethal Legion. The Legion belonged to Satanish, and they again fought the West Coast Avengers and lost. The name Hangman didn't come out of nowhere. He carries around an enchanted rope. The rope can be as long as he wants it to be, and you can't cut it unless he wants you to. Literally, by force of will, Hangman can make the rope uncuttable. The rope is like an extension of Hangman as it responds telepathically to him. but if you hurt the rope, you won't hurt him. Necrodamus was born all shriveled up, his body was incredibly weak. The natural fix here is to turn to dark magic, that's the only thing you can do. Necro discovered that he can gain strength and even a godlike form if he steals the lives of innocent people. Classic move. The first time he tried it, he was defeated by the Defenders. The second time he tried it, he was stopped by the Avengers, specifically Scarlet Witch. She sent his soul straight to Limbo. Eventually, he did make it out of Limbo and fought the Fantastic Four, and then was sent back to Limbo. Eventually, the shriveled man was taken care of by Agatha Harkness when she created zombies to attack him. He did have quite the run though. Agatha, Fantastic Four, Defenders, and of course the Avengers. Even though Necro's physical body was weak, he still had some magical powers like flight, teleportation, energy bolts, and shields. There are actually 3 Marvel characters that have taken on the name Chlorine, and none of them are popular. Marvel keeps trying and it has yet to work. I think they are all villains too. For sure the Chlorine I'm talking about right now is a villain. The actual name of this maybe person was never revealed, but his body is made of chlorine, so he is Chlorine. I don't think this villain is human. He refers to humans as humans, and usually if you are a human you wouldn't make a point to do that. This particular version of the character has only been seen once in Avengers Volume 1 issue 188. In that single issue we meet the whole team of elements actually. There's 4 of them: chlorine, carbon, phosphorus, vanadium, and radium. They are referred to as the Elementals, but they are not affiliated with the ones in Spider-Man Far From Home at all. The Elementals catch the attention of the Avengers because they are messing with a nuclear reactor. They might have been humans that forgot they were humans. It's complicated. What we do know is that they take humans to this pod connected to the nuclear reactor to rearrange their atoms to make them the desired element. So maybe that's where they all came from. They are trying to create 100 more element people. That is their goal. My guess is they want the whole periodic table. They fail, and the Avengers eventually defeat them. Chlorine did make the team retreat at first though. Since his entire body is chlorine, he can release large quantities of chlorine gas, and that's very poisonous. He doesn't seem to have any other powers past that though. The Avengers defeat the Elementals by blowing up the reactor. The mixture of nuclear plasma and their charged atoms breaks down their atomic structures, which is their bodies. So it's presumed that they all, including chlorine, are done for. But according to the conservation of mass, nothing can be created or destroyed though. It's possible that if the character were to pick up steam, someone could just do some weird experiment and put all the atoms back together and we'd have chlorine again. This guy was primarily a villain to Thor, but did scrap with the Avengers too. Jared Carstairs was a skilled inventor and weatherman. Jared was not a good person. He stalked a girl to the point of getting fired from being the local weatherman. He couldn't handle not having the weather in his life, so he became Weather Maker. He created a suit that could create weather, not just sunny days, but also rain and tornadoes and lightning and hail. He, a force to be reckoned with. He ended up kidnapping the person he stalked, and that's when the Avengers stepped in. Weather Maker did a decent job of holding off the Avengers until Thor came back and destroyed the suit's power pack. Without it, the Weather Maker was just a guy. He was arrested, but the clever guy hid some weather circuitry in a hollow tooth and used that to escape jail. His escape effort channeled the Godstorm, which had been imprisoned by Thor, and the Godstorm hoped that this weather-crazed man would be his vessel of vengeance against Thor. So the Weather Maker got actual powers from this Godstorm and became Torrent. He ransacked New York City until Thor returned to take him back to Asgard. The guy used so much power, he pretty much exhausted himself. This made it easy for Thor to bring Torrent to Odin and get depowered and sent back to Earth. All of this happened in the Thor Godstorm series from 2001. You know how some people believe that every celebrity is secretly a member of some like demonic group or something? Well, Marvel actually did explore that once. This villain's name is Defiler, and he fought the West Coast Avengers. The Defiler is a demon. His particular brand of demon does not reside in our dimension, but does need the life force of others to survive and maintain his powers and his dimension. So he decided to come and kidnap people on Earth. But he did it with style. He arrived to Earth as a rock star. His band was called Corruption of Innocence. Iconic all around, no notes here. It's such a clever idea because people love celebrities, they will follow them anywhere, so it really wasn't hard for the guy to get people to literally follow him anywhere. And when he finished them off, there were hundreds of other people willing to take their place. The Defiler took everything up a notch at one of their concerts and started kidnapping the entire crowd. That's not even the wildest part of this issue, the whole thing is bonkers. To save all the people that have been transported through the portal to the demon dimension, Hank Pym and Mockingbird go to the dimension with a big rope tied around Pym. There are at least 100 people to save though, and all their life forces have been depleted, so they're all too weak to walk out. The solution? Hank Pym takes a fingerboard, those little tiny skateboards, and turns it into a huge skateboard so everyone can ride it out. The Defiler ultimately does get defeated when he is thrown back into his world. It's presumed that he is gone forever and died alongside his world. The world has nothing on it to feed anymore, so it is presumably gone. If you want to check out all the wacky antics, the comic is West Coast Avengers Volume 2, Issue 38.
Number 10. Kang the Conqueror. While the future of Kang in the MCU is extremely uncertain, with Jonathan Majors being removed from future projects, the fact remains that in the comics, Kang is an extremely underappreciated villain. This is likely because not as many modern comics fans know how deadly Kang can be. If you are more a fan of the MCU, or if you are more of a modern day comic book collector and reader, you might have missed out on some of Kang's most epic stories and most deadly moves when it comes to him facing the Avengers. Although I will say that comics have been hinting at his power in recent years, if you know where to look. Kang is typically an Avengers villain. While he might look ridiculous on paper, many of us comic book fans know to respect him, as Kang is a master of time who has defeated an insane number of Avengers across the multiverse. I'm not as worried for the character's future in the MCU, because the other cool thing about Kang is that he's a time traveler, and as a result, he has many different looks and identities through the years. So it's possible that he could actually be anyone hiding in disguise, laying in wait for the right moment to reveal himself and strike. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. The Lizard. The Lizard is a villain who often gets overlooked when it comes to Spider-Man fans. Why is this? Because not many people know just how dark and deadly the Lizard can be, and perhaps because the Lizard's alter ego, Curt Connors, is known for being a good man and a scientist. But that doesn't mean there isn't darkness lurking beneath the surface, even with as well-intentioned a man as Connors. And even without any potential darkness within Connors, the Lizard should be dark enough to persuade readers to be intimidated by him and respect him. You also have to think of how terrifying it must be for Connors' consciousness to exist within the Lizard when the creature is completely unleashed and fully in control. It's a complete lack of control in a way that is probably super terrifying for Curt. Number 8. Hunter in the Darkness. The Hunter in the Darkness is an interesting character, and one that honestly we do not talk enough about on Top 10 Nerd. And also super complex, to be honest. Villain, sometimes a bit of an anti-hero or an ally to heroes. While Wolverine did once free the werewolf-like being from a trap years ago, the Hunter still remained an adversary of Wolverine. It has been implied in the comics that there is a sense of camaraderie between the two at times. When we first met the Hunter in Darkness, it was made to seem like, and in fact some characters in the issue did think, that the Hunter was actually a more feral version of Logan. Number 7. Taskmaster. Everyone knows that Anthony Masters is insane when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. He has photographic reflexes, which allow him to learn any fight move or style just by observing or battling against someone, which makes him pretty hard to beat if you don't have some kind of crazy superpower set. Taskmaster might not be on anyone's A-list, but he sure has fought a ton of well-loved superheroes, including Moon Knight. Moon Knight himself doesn't have any crazy superpowers, but he does have a Batman-like ability to strike fear into the hearts of almost all of his opponents, no matter how skilled they are, which was really the only thing that made it possible for him to defeat Tony here. Number 6. Chameleon. Chameleon is definitely a hero who deserves more love and more respect, or at least more disdain if you love to hate the greatest villains. He was the first villain that Spider-Man ever faced in his own series. A lot of people don't think of shapeshifters or masters of disguise first when it comes to power levels, but the reality is someone who is really good at disguising themselves as other people can be one of the most deadly and unstoppable villains around. Look at what Mystique managed to do only a few years ago in X-Men's Inferno, or Chameleon in Devil's Reign. Not only is Chameleon great at creating chaos and hurting others by disguising himself as other people, but he also is pretty good at hatching his own plans as well. Number 5. Mystique. Mystique is someone who isn't particularly, or at least outwardly, powerful when it comes to what she's capable of and her power set, and for this reason many people have taken to underestimating her abilities. Here's why I would advise against that. 2021's Inferno issue number 4. In the Inferno series, it's revealed that while Mystique tried to play by Krakoa's rules, when she learned she wasn't going to get what she wanted from Magneto and Professor X, no matter what she did in the name of the Mutant Nation, she decided to take matters into her own hands. As Mystique so often does. I mean, that's why we love her, right? Disguising herself as many different people, she was able to easily ensure that Destiny was in fact resurrected, against the wishes of the heads of the Quiet Council. She also put into motion plans to make sure that Destiny would garner a spot on the Quiet Council, and then she was almost successful in enacting revenge on Moira X for keeping her love, Destiny, from her for so long. Mystique here proves that while her power set may have become OP over the years, it's still really her mind and her sense of cunning that makes her honestly so dangerous. Number 4, Mysterio. Another villain that often gets dismissed when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery is Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be, a not so real threat. Still, in the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely fool the entire world. Or well, even being defeated, he still kind of did. His plan here was to convince everyone he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even despite seemingly dying, I'm still not convinced, he actually still managed to succeed somewhat. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting him to kill the entire X-Men team and school himself. Yikes. Number 3, Destiny. Destiny is one of those villains that is severely underrated. I mean, most people don't even think of her when they think about Marvel villains. Even when they think about X-Men villains, she doesn't happen to be one of the folks that first comes to your mind. And yet she is one of the most powerful out there, despite being very squishy, honestly. Even dead, she is somewhat of a threat in the comics due to her previously recorded premonitions. You see, Destiny is the lover of Mystique, and her mutant power is that she can see into the future. The more likely a future becomes, the more she can see that future, and her visions have often been known to be quite accurate. We don't have a lot of characters who can see into the future, and most of them tend to be on the hero side of things that do have that power, so it's interesting to see a villain with such rarely seen powers, but especially when you consider, her alignment as a villain. Number 2, Madeline Pryor. Of course, I have to include the Goblin Queen. You guys know how much I love her. Anytime I do a list like this, she's one of the first people that comes to my mind, and we gotta talk about her. Madeline Pryor is a woman who seems to easily be forgotten and shelved, which is surprising considering how great of a threat she posed in the original Inferno story. Currently in the comics, Madeline Pryor is making a comeback, even going on to lead her own X-Men team, nicknamed the Dark X-Men editorially. Madeline Pryor has threatened the entire world with her dark rituals and demon pacts before, and though often forgotten, she really shouldn't be, considering just how dangerous and how powerful she is. Number 1, the Maker. The Maker is the alternate version of Reed Richards. I've always felt that Richards actually might make a better villain than a hero, and the Maker seems to have been this thought made manifest, living proof of it being so. The Maker initially started out as a hero, leader of the team known as the Fantastic Four. However, in the Ultimate Universe where he hails from, the original Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, his and Sue's future of marital bliss was not as guaranteed. And in fact, after the tragedy of Ultimatum and Sue Storm turning down his marriage proposal, Richards got a different perspective on life, which inevitably resulted in him becoming a villain. In this universe, Reed had a rough childhood, and part of where his villainy started was in turning on his own family. A family that had honestly mistreated him for years. Yeah, in this reality, Reed commits patricide and matricide to get back at his parents. And that's just the beginning of his story as a villain. Extremely counter to his Earth 616 alternate.
Number 10, Mr. Fear. Zoltan Drago was the owner of a failing wax museum who was trying to create a chemical that would bring his wax sculptures to life so that he could create his own private army. Unfortunately for him, his plan to have an army of wax celebrities would not come to pass because, that's not how chemistry works. However, in his attempts, he did inadvertently manage to create a chemical that could be used to fill any foe with indescribable fear. So he said, meh, close enough, and he developed a gas gun that could shoot this formula, and he became Mr. Fear, presumably because Scarecrow was taken. He fought Daredevil a few times, making Matt have to live up to the moniker of the Man Without Fear. He was later killed by the villain Samuel Saxon, who took up the Mr. Fear mantle before he died and became became the robotic villain Machine Smith. When this happened, Matt Murdock's rival from law school, Larry Cranston, became the third and current Mr. Fear. Number 9. The Jester. It's difficult to break into acting. It's a tough industry, as Jonathan Powers discovered. After years of struggling, the egotistical actor was cast in a production of Cyrano de Bergerac, but his performance was not well received, and he was booed by audience members, panned by critics, and fired after the show's opening night. After this, he decided to learn as many skills as possible to make himself a more versatile and hireable performer, taking up bodybuilding, gymnastics, and fencing, just to name a few skills. Perhaps due to his mammoth ego, he refused to take any actual acting lessons, and as a result could only find work on a children's show where he was constantly having pies thrown in his face. As all actors do, he eventually went insane, and with the help of the Tinkerer became the supervillain known as the Jester. He has gone on several bizarre crime sprees, such as when he used fake newscasts to convince people that JFK was alive and that the Vietnam War never occurred, which was probably written to be a goofy scheme back in the 70s, but in today's climate is just sad because it would probably work. He has tangled with Daredevil several times over the years, although he did retire for a time after successfully impersonating a famous actor named Benedict LaForge and performing the role of Cyrano on TV in Daredevil number 218. He actually did very well with the part, and this seemed to give him some much needed closure, although he did eventually return to a life of crime. Number 8. The Matador. Not to be confused with the Matador who fought Captain America back in the 1940s, Manuel Eleganto was introduced in one of Daredevil's earliest adventures, back when the hero was still garbed in his original yellow and red costume. His origin is very clearly laid out in a newspaper Matt reads in Daredevil number 5, so I'm just gonna pull a quote directly from there. For years, Eleganto was the most famous, most controversial bullfighter in all of Spain. His mastery of the bulls was unquestioned, but his cruelty and his brutality towards the bulls made the crowds hate him. In fact, in his last public appearance, the audience actually was heard to cheer for the bull. This so infuriated the temperamental Matador that he turned to hurl an epithet back at the cheering crowd. It goes on for a bit, but basically what happened is he got gored by the bull and blamed humanity, and decided to become a Matador-themed criminal. And by that I mean he would do stuff like stand in the street and throw his red cape at an armored truck's windshield, causing it to crash. Not exactly one of Daredevil's greatest threats. Number 7. Stiltman. First appearing in Daredevil number 8, Stiltman was a scientist named Wilbur Day who stole the plans for a hydraulic ram device in order to create telescopic metal legs, which allowed him to tower above the people of New York as Stiltman. He used the power of being tall to attack the scientist, Carl Caxton, multiple times in hopes of stealing the scientist's shrink ray. On one of those occasions, he hoped to use the device to shrink the Golden Gate Bridge, but was defeated by Daredevil and Black Widow. Surprisingly, the ability to be tall has not made Stiltman an effective supervillain, and he has been defeated with relative ease by multiple heroes in the Marvel Universe. Number 6. Bushwhacker. Although he was originally a Catholic priest, Carl Burbank renounced his vows upon the death of several of his young parishioners. In what may just be the most extreme career pivot in history, he joined the CIA, where he got a cybernetic arm that he is able to transform into a gun. After leaving the CIA, he became a freelance assassin who specialized in killing his targets in artistic and aesthetically pleasing ways. He has fought against Daredevil and other heroes such as Wolverine and the Punisher, and has worked for a variety of employers including the Kingpin, the Hood, and the US Hulk operations. He's been a consistent presence in the Marvel Universe over the years, but is rarely the main villain, usually working as a pawn in a more prolific villain's schemes. Number 5. Ikari. During Mark Waid's excellent run on Daredevil, Bullseye was confined to an iron lung after being defeated by Daredevil. He had Lady Bullseye hire a new threat named Ikari to kill his rival. Bullseye had Ikari experimented on with the same toxic waste that gave Matt his abilities, and had him trained to be just as effective a fighter as Matt. In their first encounter, Ikari lured Matt to a warehouse and confronted him dressed in Batlin Jack Murdoch's old robe and a costume modeled after Matt's original yellow and red number. They fought to a standstill, and Matt tried to negate Ikari's radar sense by turning on the building's sprinkler system, only to learn that although he had radar sense, he was not blind. He could have killed Matt, but he decided to let Matt live in fear of his eventual death at his hands. The two fighters got their rematch when Ikari was hired by the Kingpin to fight Murdoch to the death. Kingpin had Matt's loved ones kidnapped and informed Daredevil that if he won the fight, he would have one of his loved ones executed. Daredevil and Ikari fought for hours until the Shroud intervened and seemingly killed the assassin. The body disappeared soon after, but his severed head was later later seen as a trophy in Kraven the Hunter's island hideout in Captain America number 697. Number 4. Black Wing. The son of the crime boss Silvermane, Joseph Manfredi learned how to train and control bats to do his bidding. This brought him to the attention of the villain Ringmaster, who offered Joe a position in his circus of crime. Joe accepted and created a very familiar looking suit that gave him limited flight abilities, and he began committing crimes with his trained mutant bats. Because the more obvious name had already been taken, he started calling himself Blackwing. The circus of crime came into conflict with Daredevil, who defeated them, capturing everyone but Blackwing, who managed to escape. He tangled with Daredevil a couple more times and also fought other heroes such as Black Widow, Captain America, and the Falcon before giving up the bat theme and becoming a regular crime boss like his father. Probably for the best, as his decision to straight up dress as Batman was a lawsuit waiting to happen. Number 3. Man-Bull. Bill Torrens was a common criminal working for the evil android Mr. Klein with his partner, Itch. He was tasked with kidnapping people so they could be used in Klein's experiments. When Daredevil intervened, Bill was forced by his employer to be a test subject. The experiment transformed him into a super-sized bull man named Man-Bull. Daredevil defeated him and he reverted to his human self, being sent to prison for his crimes. Itch later smuggled him in a revised formula which permanently transformed him into the Man-Bull and allowed him to escape from prison. He has teamed up with other Daredevil enemies such as the Owl and, ironically, the Matador, and has also fought heroes such as the Hulk and Scarlet Witch, but isn't a particularly well-known Marvel villain. He did, however, recently make the jump to live action when he appeared as a member of the Abominations group therapy session in the She-Hulk TV show. Number 2. Robert Goldman. Robert Goldman was a classmate of Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson at Columbia Law when they were all training to be lawyers. He would go on to become the assistant district attorney and was the lawyer who arranged the deal which allowed Daredevil to keep his secret identity in exchange for a guilty plea when he was on trial for murder. It was later revealed that he is actually Matt's guardian angel who has been manipulating the horrible events of Matt's life in order to make him a better hero. He has claimed responsibility for the death of Elektra's father, causing Matt's stint in prison and influencing Elektra's death at the hands of Bullseye. He also influenced and helped the FBI agent who revealed Matt's identity back in the Bendis run, sent Typhoid Mary to the Kingpin, and caused a train explosion that almost caused the death of Matt's girlfriend, Kirsten McDuffie. This is a very recent development in the Daredevil canon, so we have yet to see how valid these claims are, or how much of an impact this villain will leave with readers, but their confrontation has certainly left the Man Without Fear shaken to his core. Number 1. Death's Head. The father of longtime Daredevil love interest Karen Page, Paxton Page was a famous scientist who created a cobalt bomb. When he refused to sell the bomb to anyone, including the US government, he was called a traitor and became a recluse, living with his wife Penelope out in their creepy old mansion. He continued to experiment with the radiation and developed powers which allowed him to manipulate cobalt radiation, being able to form and throw fireballs at his enemies. He was driven mad and began dressing as a figure from Karen's childhood nightmares, wrapping himself in bandages and wearing a skull-like mask. He developed a formula which turned everything but the bones on his horse invisible and began haunting the grounds of his mansion like a Scooby-Doo villain. While fighting Daredevil in his secret laboratory, a vat of molten cobalt tipped over and almost killed his daughter. He regained his senses for a moment and pushed Karen out of the way, getting caught in the spill himself and killed. He was only featured in 2 issues of the comics, Daredevil Volume 1 issues 56 and 57, but given how things ended for his daughter, a story featuring him returning for revenge on Daredevil could be a lot of fun.
Number 10. The S-Men. Red Skull, being the dastardly devil he is, made some backup plans in the case of his eventual demise. One such plan was a clone of himself who would come back in the modern era. Okay, side note, why do villains do this, making clones of themselves? The individual villain still kind of passes away, so if they move their consciousness or something, that kind of makes sense, but I don't get why this is a thing. But I'm pretty sure this clone isn't even like that. I'm gonna make myself upset, so let's just continue. Basically, waking up in this new modern world with mutants and all that jazz, this new Red Skull decided that he was going to dig up the body of Professor X and steal some of his brain, granting himself some telepathy, and as an antithesis to the X-Men, he created the S-Men. Yes, very creative. This was a group of individuals that the Red Skull had empowered using crazy mad science and magic. Almost all of them were pretty quickly taken out of existence by Magneto when this Red Skull tried to make a camp to exterminate mutants. Bad move, buddy. Bad move. Number 9. Zodiac Cartel. Honestly, it's a pretty cool idea for a group. This villainous group of hand-picked business leaders who were all born under different zodiac signs, as their leader Cornelius Van Lunt, or Taurus, was heavily into astrology. Each member, while representing a zodiac sign, also was based in a different American city, and their main goal was world economic and political domination. Its members originally were, other than Cornelius, Scorpio, Jake Fury, Aquarius, Darren Bentley, Aries, Marcus Lasseter, Cancer, Jack Cleveno, Capricorn, Willard Weir, Gemini, Joshua Link, Leo, Daniel Radford, Libra, Gustav Brandt, Pisces, Noah Perricone, Sagittarius, Harlan Vargas, and my representative, Virgo, Elaine McLaughlin. The team was first formed after the dissolution of a previous group called the Great Wheel of Zodiac, which had covert agents from around the globe including Baron von Strucker, Dum Dum Dugan, and even Leonardo da Vinci. Its dissolution also led to the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, and Leviathan as well, so you could definitely say it was important and somehow still relatively obscure. Number 8. Headmen. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headmen, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Bonded together through their heads, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. This quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla, Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape, Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically has really baggy skin, and Chandu the Mystic's head has been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite versatile. Number 7. Circus of Crime. Fritz Tybalt, then manager and ringmaster of a small Austrian circus, became active in the Axis powers during World War II. He was asked by German intelligence to take his circus to the United States of America to give performances in major cities while actually using his circus members' powers and talents in order to take out government officials. Fritz Tybalt's evil circus of crime consisted of Omir the Snake Charmer, Tommy Thumb, the Trapeze Trio, and Zandow the Strongman. However, Tybalt, who came to be known as the Ringmaster of Death, was captured by Captain America. But fast forward, and the Circus of Crime's new MO was giving a performance to a large audience. Then the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members then robbed the audience, who would remember nothing about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and the performance continued. This criminal circus fought the Hulk, Spider-Man, the Hawkeyes, the Avengers, and others. Number 6. The UFOs. These villains and their cleverly chosen team names. UFOs, like UFOs, because they got their powers in space. Yes, of course. Someone get me out of here, please. Okay, the UFOs here, inspired by the powers gained by the Fantastic Four, went to great lengths trying to reproduce the same accident that gave those heroes their abilities. The attempt succeeded, but they were interrupted by Bruce Banner, who discovered their ground control facility and was able to bring the shuttle down, because he thought it had been exposed to the cosmic radiation by accident. They were none too happy, as they thought they could have been made even stronger if he had not interfered, and they displayed their newfound powers in a frankly pretty awesome fight with the Incredible Hulk, even if they lost. Vapor has the ability to alter her form into any known gas. Vector gained the power of telekinesis from cosmic rays. X-Ray has been permanently transformed into a living energy field with the power to expel forms of heavy radiation capable of hurting even the Hulk. Ironclad has been permanently transformed into organic metal steel. He has superhuman strength, durability, and the ability to decrease or increase his own weight. His fight with the Hulk literally shook the universe, which is super cool. You should probably check him out. Number 5. The Frightful Four. A second group inspired by the Fantastic Four. Yes, the Frightful Four also did not come up with a very clever name. The Wizard, the Sandman, and Paste Pot Pete, who all regularly did battle with the Human Torch and were defeated by him around the same time, realized that they all had unique powers and a mutual disdain for the Fantastic Four. The Wizard suggested that they form a group that would be the evil counterparts to the Fantastic Four. A great idea, but it's just 3 dudes. They need a 4th member to their group, and what do you know, the Wizard had heard of a strange woman hiding out on a remote island on the Mediterranean who had complete control of her hair. Traveling there, the Wizard convinced Madame Medusa to join their ranks. Now this Madame Medusa was actually Medusa of the Inhumans, as some of you may have guessed, but she was kept under the influence of the Wizard using a device that kept her memories forgotten to her. They made their first attack at Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman's engagement party, which is kinda just rude if you ask me. Number 4. Wrecking Crew. When Dirk Garthwaite, otherwise known as Wrecker, held onto his enchanted crowbar, he invited his 3 chums, ex-physicist Dr. Elliot Franklin, ex-Army Master Sergeant Henry Camp, and ex-farmhand Brian Kalusky to come and do the same in the middle of a thunderstorm. When lightning struck the crowbar, all 3 men were empowered, becoming Thunderball, Bulldozer, and Piledriver respectively, and coming together to be the villainous Wrecking Crew. These mystical strongmen were mainly an enemy to Thor, but they originally fought against the Defenders. This group has actually been around for a pretty long time and have battled many a superhero. The Fantastic Four, Avengers, Omega Flight, Spider-Man, the Thunderbolts, and even got into a fight between the Marvel and DC universes. Number 3. Menagerie. The Menagerie is likely a more recent evil team, showing up for the first time in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Number 1 in April of 2014, when they tried to steal valuable decorated eggs from an antique store and were pretty easily defeated. So like, from the get-go, the impressive feats are on the lower side of the list, if you know what I'm saying. In fact, I'd say the most famous thing they've done is when they disintegrated Spider-Man's spider suit, making him have to create web underwear for himself. And it's kind of the underwear that is remembered here, not the menagerie. The animal-themed criminal team was created by White Rabbit, and its members included Hippo, Ox, Skyne, who did the spider suit disintegrating, Squid, Swarm, and, wait for it, Panda Mania. Nice. The Menagerie also is known for trying to rob a club where Nadia Van Dyne was celebrating her birthday with numerous other heroes, which, as you can imagine, it didn't go too well for them. Number 2. Death Throes. Remember how the headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throes, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff? The ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that works really well together, juggling their weapons between each other and doing battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the big top casino in Las Vegas. The Marvel Wiki even lists their origins as quote-unquote joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly kinda had a hoot putting together this point, as I can't believe this group of villains even exists. And lastly, at number 1 is Horticulture. Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think the Horticulture are my favorite. For starters, they look so cool. But then, you find out it's a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to its more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it. I just love how they use their regular names, and the names just kinda suit their age and interest in plants. I don't know how, but they kinda just do. Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers, selling software to Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. But seriously, look at them. They're just awesome.
Number 10. Cordyceps Jones. Cordyceps Jones is one of my favorites of the cosmic villains mentioned on this list. He is definitely a super weirdo. Basically a mushroomy looking space mobster who is made up of fungal spores. While he might sound ridiculous, he is not a villain that you want to underestimate, trust me. He both looks and is terrifying. Most recently using one of his casinos to threaten the existence of the entire planet of Earth by creating a betting pool based around its destruction. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like? Number 9. The Brood. Despite being a bunch of insectoid alien critters, the Brood are actually among one of the most normal of the weirdos on our list. They kinda resemble the monstrous species we see in Alien, and likewise they are usually known for bursting through people's stomachs. The Brood also seek out hosts to incubate their young, which then of course burst out of the host's bodies to be born. Pretty much just like we see happen in Alien. Something interesting and bizarre that we know about the Brood too is that they don't just do this for survival's sake because, you know, it's required for them to continue to exist as a species. They actually enjoy terrorizing others throughout the cosmos. Inflicting pain and causing panic is something pretty much all Brood enjoy, giving them actual gratification from the violent acts that they commit. In fact, in their race, it's actually weird to feel a sense of empathy or compassion for others and to not enjoy pain, which is why Brood was ostracized and left to die by the Brood Queen, before he was then found and taken in by the X-Men. And weirdly, in his case, the ability to be friendly and kind is actually like his mutant power as a Brood, because, I mean, that is a mutation. Number 8. The Phalanx. Phalanx are some of the most freaky of the villainous cosmic alien races we have over at Marvel Comics. They are believed to have been created by the Technarchy, but I don't think they have actually been made aware of this connection, probably because the Technarchy doesn't want them to know that. Like the Borg, who likely inspired them, they are a cybernetic race focused on assimilating other worlds. They don't take you to a cube to experiment on you though, but instead infect you with the techno-organic virus, which then slowly changes you into a cyborg, erasing everything within you that is organic and turning you techno-organic, some might say. Number 7. Dark Celestials. So weird. Because when you think about it, the Celestials and even the Dark Celestials actually are a big part of the reason that we even have life on Earth in Marvel Comics. In fact, their existence could even be used to explain the sheer number of superpowered beings that are on Earth as well. The Progenitor, who appeared in AXE Judgment Day after being resurrected by the Avengers and Eternals, is actually the first to have become corrupted. Dark Celestials are just Celestials, godlike cosmic beings, who were corrupted by the Horde. The Progenitor did initially not turn dark, but instead died as a result of this, falling to planet Earth billions of years ago. The Celestial who searched for the Progenitor became corrupted by the corpse they found, and then they were turned dark, thereby creating the Dark Celestials, and actually becoming the first Dark Celestial, but not the first person to be infected by the Horde. Number 6. Horde. The Horde are another insectoid alien race that are so cosmic it actually hurts me. They're basically the race that is meant to cosmically balance out the Celestials. They are agents of the Fulcrum along with the Celestials and Watchers. And the Fulcrum, for those who are not familiar with this term, basically represents the balance of the cosmos. In essence, Marvel's God. The Fulcrum is actually known by another name that many may more commonly recognize from Marvel Comics, the One Above All. Yeah, so like I said, basically God. The Horde are therefore just made to be a force of destruction to counter the Celestials' force of creation in the universe. Why do they look like insects? Probably because it's just creepier that way. Why did they choose to corrupt the Celestials? Because they could. I'm not really sure how all that factors into Fulcrum's plans, or if it does at all, but it's a thing that happened at least, so hey, there's that. Number 5. Raquel. I never know how to say this name. Raquel isn't a strange cosmic villain in the sense of her appearance or role, but more is mentioned here because she suddenly popped up in the comics after years of being dead, which is what makes her kinda weird. It had been so long that her return was mostly met with confusion from fans at that point because many who were reading her reappearance didn't actually know who the heck she was. Even I had to do some digging to fully understand the importance of just who this character is. Raquel Raquel was once one of the rulers of the Skrull Empire. Unlike Varanki, who was made queen after the Skrulls' homeworld fell, and actually who a lot of people thought I think Raquel was at first, Raquel was actually the Skrull Empress, back when the homeworld was still around and doing well. Raquel first appeared back in 1979 and would perish in the comics in issue 257 of Fantastic Four in 1983, only a few short years later. She returned only a few short years ago from now though, so like it's 2023 now. I think she reappeared back in like 2020 or something like that, or 2021, in the Empire event, where she was revealed to be Hulkling's grandmother who survived the destruction of Tarnax 4, and who had been working behind the scenes ever since undercover as a Kree pursuer while putting into motion a plan to make her grandson ruler of the United Skrull and Kree empires. Which is like, what? That was me when I found all that out. Number 4. Annihilus. Annihilus is weird in the most comic book way for a villain. He hails from the Negative Zone and is also insectoid in appearance, like so many others on our list. Annihilus basically has a cosmic magic wand, if you will, known as the Cosmic Control Rod, that he used in his attempt to take over the Negative Zone. In more recent appearances, however, Annihilus actually usually chooses to wear this rod as sort of a protective accessory, using it to protect him against naturally occurring dangers such as aging, heat, and cold, in addition to gaining the ability to fly through space. I mean, at the end of the day, Annihilus is like kind of an insect, so he needs to be protected against those things. He also initially became a villain of the Fantastic Four because they borrowed the Cosmic Rod to help treat the Invisible Woman during her pregnancy. Though admittedly, they did return the Cosmic Rod, so I don't know why Annihilus is so angry. I guess if you need something to live though, you'd be like, hey, don't just take that. Number 3. Galactus. When you think about it, Galactus is a pretty weird villain. He's basically a giant man who can fly through the vacuum of space, although he usually prefers to do so from within his own even more enormous spaceship, because I guess he likes having his things with him, who wears a very large hat, has much hunger, and as a result basically eats planets. Oh, and he's also basically a universal constant, meaning that without his existence, the universe is kind of thrown off balance. Despite being an antagonist, you also kind of need him to exist, or at least, I mean, you used to need him. I don't really know what's happening with that. Recently, Galactus got dusted in a fight involving the Black Winter and Thor, and the universe still seems to be existing without too much disruption right now. But even that is weird, because if we established how Galactus is basically a necessary evil earlier, you'd think his death would cause things to get pretty wonky pretty quickly. Although, to be fair to Donny Cates' current Thor series, that's likely coming in due time, because it was kind of hinted at that, yeah, killing Galactus may have been a bad move. Number 2. Impossible Man. Impossible Man is one of my all-time favorite weirdos from the cosmic realm of Marvel Comics. He's kind of like Marvel's equivalent of DC's fifth-dimensional imp, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Impossible Man hails from the planet Pop-Up and is known as a Pop-Upian. He is often depicted as being more a misguided villain than a malicious one. For the most part, he gets into trouble with heroes because of a misunderstanding or because of kind of his love for pranking. Like Mr. Mixie, he is sometimes an ally to the heroes who he has also been known to torment, and is known for being pretty intensely powerful, I'd say, having molecular manipulation powers which allow him to change his form, shapeshift, and even duplicate himself. Also, he's got a very goofy design that honestly reminds me of a cross between Mr. Mixie and the Coneheads, and I love it. Number 1. Xemnu. Definitely one of the weirdest weirdos out there for me. Even his name sounds so cosmically weird and fantastic. Xemnu. Reminds me of Xanadu, although not at all related to that 80s Olivia Newton-John fantasy musical classic, to clarify. Sadly, I wish Xemnu was Xanadu themed villain. What would that even be like? I don't know. I'm here for it. Xemnu with like some roller skates on. Xemnu is a Hulk villain. He was an alien cyborg prisoner who escaped from exile only to crash land on Earth. Already that sounds pretty wild. But hey, it gets weirder. Xemnu initially hoped to control the minds of the people of Earth and get them to build him a new spaceship, one that was so powerful that its launch would actually in essence destroy Earth. Xemnu is a psionic being who can hypnotize his victims and control their minds. He can also use hosts to kinda heal himself, in essence transforming their body into his until there's nothing resembling them or their mind left. Even stranger, Xemnu was technically the first character to be known as the Hulk before the creation of the Bruce Banner turned green giant version of the character, which is even weirder to think about. Xemnu's OG Hulk.